our first game for this show is Advance Wars 2: Black Hole Rising. It's one of many things that have been rising since about the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, like the cost of houses.
The rise of and rising is in almost probably 60% of game and movie titles in the last 10, 15 years.
Not an Assassin's Creed game yet, though, oddly enough.
Assassin's Creed 7, Assassins Rising.
I think we're
Rise
past
of the Assassins.
I think we're past 7 at this point. I mean, not in numbered titles.
Rise of the...
Okay, yeah.
Are we doing this to stretch out the timer? Because
yeah, we are. We're padding this the hell out.
Well,
okay, so Advance Wars 2: Black Hole Rising was nominated by @AngryEd on Twitter. Thanks, @AngryEd. It was developed by Intelligent Systems. It was published by Nintendo for the Game Boy Advance. It first came out on June 23rd, 2003. I believe this was actually released first in North America, and I'm kind of confused because I'm not sure if it ever came out in Japan.
Because the first game was massively delayed outside of America.
Which is why I think we got this one. Well, it was delayed in the United States, too, because it was coming out around 9/11. And
it did come out, I think. Maybe it got pulled off shelves or something.
Yeah, I think it got... well, I don't know whether I think it was pulled off shelves. And this I never got, because I remember this very clearly. There's a lot of stuff that got either taken off the market or... First of all, 9/11 happened on a Tuesday, which is when a lot of things get released. There were albums that were released that day, all that stuff.
So Tanka, as a Dream Theater fan, probably knows they had a concert DVD release that had the fucking Twin Towers wreathed in flames.
Yeah, that's
on
right.
September
That was
Bob Dylan's seminal effort, Love and Theft, was released on that day.
I
bought it the day
I could be
before.
wrong. Didn't Radiohead have an album around that time also?
Not on that day.
No.
But at the time it was pulled from shelves, there was no actual ground war against anybody.
Yeah.
So I didn't really understand it's not like the game was about you don't get to destroy cities, you just take them over.
Well, I assume it's just, again, it's just Nintendo being really cautious. Nintendo tend to play it pretty safe when it comes to a controversy.
Well, I guess nobody had any idea, but I would have... Nobody was going to be like, this game involves tanks. It's if only our enemies
September the 12th was the most tasteful day in the history of civilization in the Western world. Everyone just sort of stopped. Just okay, calm down, everyone.
Also known as the last day the rest of the world liked the United States.
Yeah, pretty much. After that, it
no. Let's not go into this, please, for God's sake.
So who here has played the original Advanced Wars?
Who here hasn't? I mean,
I have. Yes. Actually, I didn't get around to it very much until last year, but once the balls started getting rolling, I really did get into it.
Yeah, I spent some time playing it early on in grad school in a Game Boy Micro, which disappeared when I moved away from Seattle, unfortunately. So I lost that and my copy, which was frustrating as hell.
Game Boy Micros, you can lose them so easily.
Someone would have found it and would have been very happy because they were great.
What's this, some kind of fancy credit card?
So I have some experience.
So basically, these are turn-based strategy games. They go all the way back to Famicom Wars, a game we didn't get anywhere but Japan, I think. It's a pretty popular series, but this is probably its high point, at least as far as I know. Advanced Wars was, and it's turn-based military strategy. You've got different units and stuff. Basically, you would describe what this is kind of a rock, paper, scissors 2.0.
I mean, it is similar if you've played Fire Emblem. It's just it's a weapons tree, basically, is generally how it works. Weapons triangle. Jeez, tree. No, it's triangle. So what is it? Something beats something, something beats something, something beats something, and then that's it. That's the basic.
Yeah, I mean, the different... you've got different units. You've got tanks, you've got transports, you've got helicopters, you've got battleships, you've got jet planes, you've got mortars, you've got all kinds of stuff. And you've got different units. You've got regular infantry, you've got anti-tank, I believe. And then it also has this thing. So each one is like anti-tank, for instance. Units are better against tanks, as you might imagine, are not as good at fighting other infantry, I think.
Yeah, the game does an interesting system where the amount of damage they do kind of is relative to the amount of health the unit has in some cases, because the unit is sort of a
you can take
a squad. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so you'll like start out with like, I don't know whether you start out with like health or like it like does this like split screen thing where they fire at each other, and if like it takes away strength of your unit, like little dudes will like fly off the screen, and then your number will go down from 10 to like 7.
Yeah, and then from that point on, you only have the strength of 7 instead of 10, which is very.
If you leave a unit on an occupied city, a city that you have control over, it will increase the unit by like 2 or 3 or something each turn. The other thing is there's like a defense or cover mechanic or something. I don't know what you want to call it, but like basically the different kinds of terrain that your units are on will have different defensive values. And so if you're attacking a unit that's on a paved road and you're attacking from a forest, the unit attacking from the forest has a slight defensive advantage over the paved road.
But they also affect your movement speed,
right?
Depending on your vehicle and stuff.
It works surprisingly. Like it's pretty intuitive. Like everything kind of makes sense in the game, which is probably. It seems amazing to me only because I didn't live in a territory that got the earlier games where they probably developed a lot of this stuff. It seems
my understanding of the games is that a lot of the stuff in it is also a result of Nintendo basically putting intelligent systems over a barrel and just being like, make it simpler. Apparently, they just refused to like put too many mechanics in. They refused to make too much complexity. It was just, it has to be super basic and make perfect sort of intuitive sense because they thought that their market was basically kids on the Game Boy, so they really wanted to make sure this game simple and like really kids could really easily wrap their heads around it. They didn't want anything that would be like too number heavy.
Right.
And they did that. They got it really, really well done.
It's like also weirdly like not like for a game that's about war, like just aforementioned, probably the darkest thing that happens in it is the fact that you've put infantry in cities and they basically just conscript people forcibly into the armed forces as they're going along. It's an incredibly light-toned game for a game that's about war and blowing people up and killing.
It's got like these like cute little like commanding officer characters you can use.
That is actually something I want to mention. I think unique to the Advance Wars series, I think even above prior Famicom Wars games, is that you can actually, in some missions, choose your commanding officer that they actually have sort of a super move, like it was a fighting game, that as you do damage to the opponents, your gauge rises, and then they're allowed to bust out some like really useful super technique as the gauge is filled.
Right, but the enemy has the same thing, so they have different COs and
it's a two-way
they have their
street.
own powers, and that is where a lot of the variety in the battles come in, because when you're fighting a new commander, they have a new power, and it does change the way you play the game. Like, you have to think about these things. Like, I know every 3 turns this guy could do this, and it's devastating unless I do this.
Right.
And that kind. So Advance Force 2 basically takes this and
does the exact same
ever so slightly.
It is the Doom 2 of the series, as it were. It's
That's
a little bit.
It's pretty accurate.
As we said, like it was coming out. I mean, I think the reason why. I mean, maybe it came out in Japan as a standalone game.
I actually don't see all I see is that it got US and UK releases and then an Australian release on the Wii U Virtual Console. Is all I see.
Yeah, I think they put it out to give the game another chance, because they voluntarily withdrew the first one, and although I don't see the point of that, I guess just to say they can call it a new game and then they can advertise it as such.
It was just one of the best games at the time on the GBA, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like launch, I hate the phrase launch window, but in terms of the GBA launch window, it was really a standout.
I mean, it was like that, or you were going to play like the Super Mario port, like, we're playing Super Mario.
Well, I mean, the GBA...
Super Mario 2, yeah.
The GBA had probably, for launch window games, had one of the strongest launch windows in the history of launch windows, in my opinion. Like, it had a really good... Had all the stuff that people wanted to try out on a more powerful Game Boy. It had an F-Zero game, it had a Mario Kart game, it had...
Circle of the Moon...
Right? Castlevania, Symphony of the Night style game. It had, it had a little bit of everything. It had, granted, Super Mario Advance was not fantastic, but it was pretty good, and it also had a great.
was neat.
multiplayer feature.
But like the thing is,
Super Mario Brothers 2.
Advance Wars, and I guess I can segue away from Advance Wars is a great handheld game. Like it's not a like it is a portable game that you can play really concisely on a handheld. It's not like a port of a bigger title or anything.
It has a quick save feature too, right? So doesn't
Yeah,
It
I'm pretty
would
sure
have
you can suspend the gameplay. Like you can save and then come back later. It has like that.
So
Yeah, I remember using that. Yes, it is definitely.
some of the battles can get pretty long. I mean, okay,
Yeah,
so what are
well-
the different? Does anybody know what the different? Like, is there anything different
Okay.
about Advance
Yeah.
Wars 2 other than the
So there's
story?
most of the differences are going to be slight because it is basically an expansion. You get one extra unit, which is basically a super tank. That I don't think it really has a tactical use. It's
Yeah,
just like if
the-
you have lots of money, you can buy it.
The Neo Tank, I believe it's
Yeah.
known as. It was provided so that you could have basically a bomber equivalent wherever your most powerful plane is to the ground. But
Yeah.
I almost feel they should have had another on foot unit at some point. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So the other it has like a new story mode, which I guess would have been really important to anyone who was like, I really want more Advance Wars and I don't play with my friends. So that's good. Which has some extra buildings that you can interact with. I don't think they're in the sort of non-story maps, and they're like just weird like powerful buildings that do like that can be like infantry emplacements and stuff. That can be worn down, if I remember how that one works.
Okay, so basically it does almost nothing new.
Well,
so it's
the
got
big
the
thing-
Neo
the
tanks,
one-
which are like the double barrel shotgun to Doom 1's shotgun, right?
Well,
Yeah, the most important change, at least I think, is with the map editor, you can now put impassable terrain, so that you can adjust the map size, which would have been pretty big for anyone who wants to mess around with the map builder, because it has a map editor as well. Both of the Advanced Wars that we're talking about have a built-in map editor that you can make your own maps.
So my main criticism about the Advance Wars games is I actually do like them, but I feel like later on in the story mode, because the game is so simplified that you get to a point where like the more complicated battles, there's really only one way to win. And it's just kind of trial and error figuring it out, and that's not as fun to me because there doesn't feel like there's this possibility out there of like I can figure out some way to win that the game maybe didn't anticipate, or I can really outsmart my opponent. You really do, like, you have to figure it out, try by try, and there's only one way to do it. And
Yeah, that's a caveat when you basically attempt a chess match against a computer. It's a result of the AI getting borderline BS to deal with.
sure.
But,
I
but
guess
the AI's predictability is a big part of what makes the game work, I think.
Yeah,
That's
in
true.
other battles.
the thing that I've seen repeated by a lot of, I've barely touched Advance Wars 2 in the past, so I've done like reading on it basically to get built up for it. But the thing I've seen a lot is like apparently the AI is a lot less exploitable in Advance Wars 2, where in the original one you could definitely like it was a solved game. Like the AI tended to behave in a specific way during every battle, whereas apparently in the sequel it was a little more adaptive.
Okay, so that means
That's pretty good.
That would be a good
think-
thing. So should we rank this thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Here's my thing I'm going to say about it. I think the series, and Advance Wars 2 actually also came out at a time where this would line up, was a good opening salvo to actually prepare Americans for a Fire Emblem. The characters were introduced in Smash Bros. Melee, and people got interested, like, ooh, who's the sword man? I want to be the sword man. And the other sword man.
It's Link, dude.
Right,
from
Link,
Zelda.
but
You couldn't be any of those swordmans, by the way, just if you're interested.
right.
Neither of those were playable in the Fire Emblem we got.
But like a portable strategy game made by Intelligent Systems, like, I don't know, I think Advance Wars and Advance Wars 2 did a lot to soften the blow of those games. They were baby's first strategy compared to Fire Emblem, which was a little more intense, but I don't know, I think they were a necessary stepping stone in the kind of tradition of Japanese companies patronizingly phasing Americans into more complicated games.
Well,
I'm thinking like Mystic Quest.
Well, I will say one of our, at least one of our fans would probably take umbrage to your comparison, because they actually much prefer Advance Wars to Fire Emblem and are very miffed that Emblem has gotten more exposure while the series has been dead since days.
Well, I mean,
they
Advance Wars
basically
just
stopped
needed to
making
step up on the
Advance
waifu
Wars.
quotient.
Oh,
You know?
Jesus. Well, I'm going to say, Doc,
It's its own damn fault.
Doc, if you're listening to this, I'm also miffed that Mario Kart's still going while F-Zero hasn't gotten jack since GX. But, Nintendo
Well, I
just
think the
does what they
important
do.
thing to understand about Advanced Wars is that there's not a lot, I think, that they have to do with it. Like, each concurrent Advanced Wars game is just kind of like, okay, well, it's Advanced Wars, and we like changed a little bit because we don't really know how to make the game better. Like, it's a really solid game. Like, anything you put in this game is just like jamming like flangs and fins and spikes and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's got new bits. Like,
well, it's telling that like the most drastic change they made to the series was the second DS game that just had a big tonal shift.
Yeah,
and
Days
people
of
were
Ruin.
really turned off by it.
That one, yeah, that was a gamble, to be sure. It got really grimdark, and that was controversial. I wonder, and that was the last Advance Wars a Wars game ever, so I'm wondering if that bid actually just kind of killed it. They tried to make a Mega Man X out of the series, and it
But we're
tanked
ranking
spectacularly.
Advanced Wars 2, not just to make sure that we talk about UN Squadron every single episode.
God damn.
I'm thinking like in that range. Like I would put it. I'm saying like below Sin and Punishment, but above UN Squadron.
I would put it a bit higher, probably somewhere around the Super Mario Land zone is where I would put Advanced Wars.
It is like probably the best example of this series.
Like
It's
honestly,
one of-
I played Dual Strike a little more, so I have more fondness for it. So I'd put Dual Strike above it today, but I'd put Dual Strike like in the Super Mario Land territory. So
I mean, it is dependent, but it's like I wanted to say like as far as strategy games go, there's probably not a turn-based strategy game I would recommend more highly to someone who's not played a turn-based strategy game than Advance Wars, because it's so
That's a good point.
Like,
as an onboarding thing, it's fantastic.
like, and even if you're into the genre like a lot, you still like for a portable game, it's near perfect in terms of like what it gives you. It doesn't compromise. It doesn't need to compromise.
What about below Final Fight, above Wonder Boy and Monsterland?
I was just looking right there, actually.
Well, the only strategy games I really know are this series and Military Madness, so I'm going to agree with you. I don't have much else to say.
That does
Okay.
put it above Blue Stinger.
Oh, and Front Mission. I do really like
That is true. The game does lack a Dog's Bower or Dog's
Why do
Bower
you
as a
encourage
character.
Here's
Olaf has a
actually,
beard. He's
But
close.
it's a very, very different kind of game, and there aren't that many of this kind of game.
So here's the thing. Here's like the actual appreciable thing I don't like about Advance Wars 2, and it's pertinent to the ranking. And the original one, that like my unit's gonna attack a guy and the numbers are gonna go down, you get this little reaction shot of the commander and they'd be like, oh,
That's
or like,
true. That is
yeah.
pretty cool.
Devil's in
They
the
got rid of that in
details.
Advance Wars 2, so put it below Blue Stinger.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Right
All right.
levels.
Wow. It
Did you
just
just
lacks
negotiate
that
yourself a
little
war?
bit of personality. Is that
It's
what you
been
mean?
like I feel like it actually added a lot. I don't know. I really enjoyed
Oh
it.
no, I agree. Like the that whole reaction shot and that sort of like little touches make a big difference. If they threw that out in 2, that's pretty serious.
Well, they did
Guess
say.
what,
but I played it and I didn't notice that they were missing.
Yeah, you didn't notice. So I mean, look, I do think it's really really solid. I'm happy kind of with either placement.
Also, the AI tweak, if that's accurate, then that makes it better than Advance Wars.
I do think the AI tweak make it a better follow up because if it's
Okay.
who wants to play a game that you can beat every time without effort?
The devil's in the details, but this one's, I think, minor enough to be negligible, in my opinion.
Okay, so
between Final Fight and Wonder Boy.
between Final Fight and Wonder Boy in Monsterland.
Excellent.
Thank you at Angry Ed on Twitter.
Thank you.